ahead and get started to be respectful of everyone's time. I'll stop sharing the screen here. Good morning. My name is Ben. I'm with Cedarhurst Senior Living. We are joined by some wonderful staff here as well as some caregivers. And we are excited to talk about what is a very timely topic for us here, which is grief, growth, or both, a primer on recovering after emotional upheaval. I know I've had some loss in the last few weeks. I know some of our staff members are dealing with that today. So I will definitely be paying extra close attention this week. But our host is Melissa Smith, who is been with us for many, many years, and I will turn it over to her. Let me highlight you here too, so you are at the very front. She's going to be guiding us today. Oh, I almost put you in the waiting room. Yeah, there we go. Spotlighted.
Oh,
Take it away, Melissa.
perfect. Oh, now that I have a tickle in my throat. Oh, goodness.
Perfect timing.
Totally perfect timing. I'm sorry. Hold on just a second.
That's all right.
Okay. Still feel it. What you can see to my eyes.
See your eyes watering a little bit? Yes.
Yeah, no kidding. So let's take a breath together. You can take your eyes on the screen or slightly off the screen. Wow. Maybe take a sip of water and take a breath in through the nose. And a breath out through the mouth. Let's do that one more time. Breathe in and breathe out. Nice. And bringing your eyes back to the screen. How is that for a recovery? So I'm Melissa Smith, and really excited to be with you all today. Grief is a topic we've covered a number of times over the years, and it continues, right, to be a prevalent part of our life. I was working with someone who has a health condition, and we were able to identify, the emotions you're experiencing right now are anticipatory grief. So noticing that loss or about to have a loss of a certain function in the body, it can show up as a type of grief. And so today we're going to talk leaning a little bit more into the resiliency side, which is a result of grief or being able to grieve or move through something. And we'll be sprinkling in lots of mindfulness together. So to start off, make sure that you've got a pen, some paper, because we will be doing some things where we're going to be writing down today. And it's always really helpful so that you can sometimes you spend time or invest time in these things and then go away and go, wait a minute, I just spent an hour. I know I feel a little bit better, but I'm not sure what I remember. So jotting down anything that feels really relevant for you. And hopefully, if you haven't put in the chat box, if you're here with us live, if you haven't put in the chat box where you're zooming in from, we'd love to see that as well, and connect with you as well there. So we'll do a grounding exercise to start us out. And I sometimes call it the Take 5 senses. It's pretty, if you were to Google the 5 senses, you would find it very, very easily. But it's 5 things that you see. So take a look around your room. Sometimes I'll pick a color, a type of object, or I'll just simply label things. So go ahead and just take a look around your room, and in your mind, allow yourself to label 5 things that you see. Sometimes I'll even look over my shoulder. That's a sense of grounding, really becoming aware of your surroundings. And when you've labeled 5, you want to go to 4 things that you can touch. And so, your seat's an easy one, something in front of you, your desk, if you've got a cup or a mug. Yeah. I generally include myself. So sometimes I'll take my hands and clasp my hands or put my hands on my jeans or my legs and just rub that. So 5 or 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear. I've got a little fan. I can also hear the heater. Maybe you hear the sound of my voice, or maybe you hear noises in the hallway or around your office or wherever you are at home. Yeah. So just noticing that. And then 2 things that you can smell. So you may have to actually pull a scent towards you if you have, I love the smell of coffee. So smell that. If there's sort of a smell or aroma in your office or home. And last, one thing that you can taste. So maybe there's a sort of a taste in your mouth if you've just eaten something, or you can take a sip of your drink and notice that and savor that for a moment. And then take a moment to notice how you feel doing those 5 grounding sense exercises. So I'm curious how many of you were also ruminating on something that was happening in the past while you were doing that, or maybe projecting into the future. It's really difficult. Your mind actually is a monotasker. And if you think you're an overly skilled multitasker, you're actually really skilled at task switching, which means your brain really has the capacity for really one thing at a time, but it's learned how to switch really quickly. And you might even notice that it's not super efficient. Right? We think we're able to do all these things, but then you kind of go, oh, wait, where was I again? Or, oh, what are they saying again? Because I'm actually not fully paying attention. So just starting to notice that the more we can really allow ourselves that focused attention, whether it's labeling something, listening for something, tasting something, your experience can be completely different. And that goes the same for noticing the embodiment of what you're feeling or sensing in your body. So consider asking yourself, what am I feeling in my body today? Maybe you're feeling numbness. Maybe you're feeling like heated. Maybe feeling a lack of sensation. Some of us have neuropathy in hands and feet. Maybe feeling tension headache. So just take a moment. What am I noticing in my body? Might even close your eyes and see if that's helpful, or you can even look down. And just by paying attention, notice if it gets a little louder or if it gets a little dimmer. Just notice. And then ask yourself, what would I like to do with that? So if it's a tension headache, maybe you offer some gentle massage on the forehead. If it's some tension on the shoulders, maybe you roll your shoulders a little bit. Maybe the stomach's growling, or maybe you're feeling a dry throat. Do you need to take a sip of water? So notice that you can affect the body. You can dial things down just even the smallest amount by allowing yourself to do something for it. And it can be really, really powerful. If you've ever, as a caregiver or even working with a small child, just asking them what they notice and what they sense in their body can be incredibly empowering. And by attuning, we call this co-regulation, by attuning to the other person saying, gosh, what are you sensing? What do you notice in your body? Do you feel tight? Do you feel angry? And just by having them notice can actually dampen those sensations. And then you have the opportunity to connect, co-regulate, asking that person what they need, a hug, some space, more time, right? So then that person starts to build agency just out of that one question. So let's talk about how we build that agency and resiliency. So I'm going to pull up my screen for you. All right. So more of a catchy title than anything, right? Grief, growth, or both. Um, Emotional upheaval is a really strong word. But think about how you felt in times of grief. We can often think of it as upheaval. The reason it is or shows up as grief in our life is because it was, right, some kind of act of loss. And with loss comes typically these kinds of emotions. And if not, then consider asking yourself, what am I dampening down, numbing, or masking in order to just kind of make it? And so being able to really get real and authentic with those emotions allows us to move through them much quicker. So today, a little bit of a menu. We did our 5 senses grounding, is to introduce resiliency. And I think this is such an impactful part that we don't even really think about in our daily lives. So resiliency is that capacity to withstand and recover quickly from difficulty. We call it like mental toughness or mental fitness sometimes, or our ability in therapy, they might call it distress tolerance, right? So how easily we're able to, when we counteract with difficult emotions, difficult situations, big losses in our lives, how quickly we can bounce back, right? So that sense of elasticity, not just in our flexibility, but that ability to bounce back even stronger when really challenging things happen to us. I don't know how many of you want more of that, but I do. Yes. Um, so these are some ways that we're going to be interweaving some mindfulness through this. Ways that we can build our capacity for resiliency when we've experienced loss. And the first one is to recognize stress in our bodies. So I just introduced that as an example. What are we noticing today? What's arriving? I love this. This came from Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Buddhist meditation teacher. He would say, we are not stress, but stress happens, right? It's a situation. You actually embody peace. I know some of you are thinking, no, not me, or no, not so and so. But at the heart of who you are is this principle of homeostasis. So it's basically science. Your body is constantly trying to regulate itself. If you're not sure about this, when you go outside and it's like 100 degrees outside, I know it's winter for most of us, right? It's not going to be 100 degrees, but imagine the summertime, 100 degrees. What happens? Your body begins to perspirate, or you heat, right? Like you feel the heat. In other words, your body is trying to cool you off. If you experience something that feels really sad, what happens? An emotional response is often tears. Your body's way of trying to alleviate some of that sensation. Your body is constantly seeking healing. You get a paper cut. Within moments, your skin actually grows back together. Your body is constantly working for your good and for your healing. That's how it works. And so because you have this natural inclination toward the body regulating itself, whether it's hormonally, whether it's information that it's giving you, it's telling you you're hungry or you're thirsty or you need to go to the bathroom. This is all information that your body is perceiving about how to care for itself. So if you've got a pen, I would love for you to write where you have stress in your body right now. And I'm going to write mine down. For me, I carry it right across the back of my neck. It's where I tend to kind of feel it. And then write down what makes it feel better. So for me, stretching, um, sometimes just self massage, um, resting, lying down actually feels really good. Taking breaks from my computer. So I would be curious, whatever you've written down, where you feel something in your body. And I would love to acknowledge many of us feel chronic pain, and that is sort of your baseline. And so my hope is that if for those of you who feel chronic pain, that whatever it is you're doing to help soothe the body, that it's not exasperating pain, but it either stays the same or lessens. So as you're thinking about what you experience in your body, what do you do to help self-soothe it that's healthy? So you might just jot down a few of those things and then consider, put a little star or a check mark as something you've already done, or a star by something you can do today for your body. So whatever that is. So as soon as we start to no longer ignore, but continue to recognize when stress arrives in our body, that is what gives you power and agency. So one of the key skills that I work with in therapy clients is to begin to notice when they feel these little moments of stress, what happens in their body. So then they have the power, right, to alleviate, dampen, or soften that. So I'll invite you right now, if you're feeling something in your body, what could you move to create a different sensation? So I'm just going to move my neck a little bit side to side. Oh, right there. Oh, I think, I don't know how, as we get older, there's this meme that goes around that says, uh, you know, I'm totally going to butcher this, but how many of you wake up with a sleeping injury? Like you go to sleep and the next day you're like, I can't walk. Or, oh, I've like, somehow dislocated my shoulder. So if anyone else has sleeping injuries, I can relate. But any movement, and then now here's the key. You want to notice how it feels. So what this tells me is that your body has something called nociception, which means the ability to detect pain. Also, that ability to detect stress. And if you're able to make a small change within just a very short period of time, that tells me that it's nervous system related, meaning it's embedded in our nervous system to be able to make these small changes. We can either be escalated in stress, that's our nervous system, or we can de-escalate. So you actually have that power. All right, so turning triggers into energizers. So reflect for just a moment of something that feels like a stressful situation. And oh, here it comes again. And it could be like, I'll give you an example. A family member will say this one little thing to me, and I'll feel like I'm 12 years old again, right? It's like, oh, there they go again. There's that thing that triggers me every time. And then the emotion that comes up is anger or frustration. Or maybe it's something that you see on a daily basis that kind of triggers you. Maybe something that you hear, maybe something someone's telling you. Maybe it's a habit that you have that you don't even realize. So how do we flip the script of these habits that we have and find replacements? So let me give you an example. When I feel really stressed, sometimes I'll go straight to the cabinet and I have a favorite chip. And then the next thing I know, the entire bag is gone. So a little bit of stress eating, right? So that would be an example of, if I had a few, that wouldn't be a bad thing. But if I demolished the entire bag, that would be, right, a bit more of a trigger habit that isn't the healthiest. So what I've started to do is set myself up for success. When I feel really good, I might create some bags of healthier snacks, or I might set my tennis shoes out right next to um, the pantry to remind myself I need to go for a short walk, that I feel so much better when I go for a short walk than when I demolish a bag of chips. So whatever that habit or go-to is, that when you feel stressed, you do this. You can write it down. So I'm going to write down chips. And then my replacement habit is my tennis shoes. And I know this sounds like a silly example, but it's kind of real, right? There are certain things that we do when we feel triggered that have become habitual, that become these brain patterns. And you're not powerless in this case. You have power. So what can you change or shift? The next one is to literally build physical strength. So when we think about resiliency, our immune system functions much better when we actually have these resources inside of us. And so I'm curious if you can jot down a few things that you could do to build physical strength. For some of us, that might just mean get up more. And if we have a sedentary job, how many times can we move during the day? It might mean adding some breathing exercises so that we can build our lung capacity, so that we can learn how to take longer exhales, and have, greater immunity. So what are some things that you're doing to build physical strength? So you might just jot down one of those. And rest. How do we grow our resiliency? Well, if we're trying to be less triggered, or when we are triggered, we're trying to make better choices. We do that with better sleep. I mean, there isn't anything in our lives that isn't better when we sleep better. How many of you have some difficulty with sleep? Yeah, I'd say a lot of us. Sleep training is, we do it with children, and then we can do it as an adult. It's the real deal here. Healthy technology habits, avoiding bright screens late at night, setting yourself reminders to do these things, asking for help from people that you live with, how you can have a more balanced sleep, keeping it darker, going outside, looking at the horizon in the morning, looking at the sunset at night. It helps set your circadian rhythm. Finding pockets of time in which you can rest, even if it literally means putting your head down on your desk. Right. So telling a coworker why you're putting your head down on your desk so you can have accountability. Um, you know, Sometimes rest just might mean emotional rest, creating a boundary with someone who is emotionally draining for you, asking for help. How can you ask for help? What area of your life do you need more help with? So take a moment to jot down one way in which you might add something of rest. Could be today or could be this week. One way in which you might add rest. So I'm gonna add closing my door and just taking a moment of quiet in my office. Okay, this one you need a full sheet of paper for. You may not think so, but you do. Identify your strengths. The way to grow resiliency is to remember what you're already good at. and continue to strengthen your strengths. Sometimes I think we focus on what our weaknesses are, all the things that we do wrong, and we try to rise those up. Nothing wrong with that. But it's also really important to recognize the things we're really great at and make them even better. Because let's be honest, our strengths are strengths for a reason. It's usually things that we enjoy. It's the part of our personality in which is innate. It's like a trait within us. And those are things that we can grow and amplify very easily because they come more naturally to us. So list just a couple of things that you do really well. Anyone need help with that? Maybe you're caring and kind. Maybe you're good at empathy. Many of us are caregivers here. So this is qualities which come pretty naturally to caregivers. Maybe you're good at speaking your needs, setting boundaries. Maybe you're really good at perceiving things, creating solutions. Maybe you're good at, being a team player. You don't like being a leader. Maybe you're good at remembering things, remembering other people's birthday, for example. So take just a couple more moments here to list as many strengths as you can. And if you're willing, I would love for you to put in the chat just at least one of those strengths so that we can acknowledge each other. And then I'm going to give you a little homework assignment. Ask someone you trust and admire what they see as your strengths. And I'd like you to do it today. So you can even grab your phone right now and text your BFF. Hey, what do you see are my strengths? What am I good at? I just need a reminder today. You can email someone, ask them to thoughtfully reply, as lengthy as they would like to make it. Oh, someone put joyful, another put a team player. Yeah. You might also find that your strengths and your triggers are interrelated. So, for example, I think one of my strengths is kindness. And you can also say caring. If someone were to say that I wasn't being kind to someone else, like that would rock my world. I would probably be pretty devastated because I consider that something that I really hold as a value. So notice if one of your strengths could also be a trigger. And just noticing, right, softening a little bit to that you're human and that you'll have your moments. And it's when you can bounce back from those triggers that you actually grow that resiliency. Yeah, someone else put caring. Amazing. Yeah. If you know any of these folks, you might validate them in the comment line and the chat. Compassionate. That is a beautiful strength. Thoughtful. Yeah. Thank you for adding that. And if you think of more, I would love to have you put those in the chat. The next one is to lean into where your sources of joy are. Take a moment, if you have your strengths on one side, so I've got my strengths on the piece of paper, I'm going to flip it over. And I'd like you to list some accomplishments. If you could go way back into the well, or you can think of something recent that's happened. I recently got some feedback from a client that they really were able to overcome something, and that just felt really good. So this for me, this helping someone that um, who originally thought that they couldn't get over something. So that just felt amazing. Um, I'm thinking of an old accomplishment a long time ago. And then another one that was moving through grief. It was a loss of relationship. And at the time, I thought, oh, this just feels so dark and so heavy for so long. And now, when I think about this person, it feels lighter. It doesn't feel as dark and heavy. I was able to really move through that. Mm. Yeah. So take another 30 seconds to list a few more things, some accomplishments maybe nobody even knows about, or maybe it was big, many people know about, um, that you thought maybe at the time that it was just so hard to see how you would get through it, but you did. So about 10 more seconds, list maybe one or two more. Yeah. One of the key growth um, markers for resiliency is our ability to be able to look at that map or journey of our life and notice that we were able to get through something. And that just capacity to know that we can move through something and maybe how we move through it. Did we have community support? Did we have some emotional flexibility, some malleability there? Did we have rest, right? Well, how did we move through what we move through? And that's how we can lean into things and find more opportunities to continue to grow and find really just a sense of joy in that. Self-compassion. This is a big one. You know, I hear a lot, we call that in therapy cognitive distortions, which sounds like a really terrible phrase. In other words, it's kind of, my mom would have said when I was little, stinking thinking, from the South, what can I say? But like when our thoughts are so not helpful for us, when we think about a thought that we tell ourselves often, would we actually say that to a coworker, to a friend that we care about, um, at least in public? So why do we say those things to ourselves? Right? Not helpful, not helpful. And just that ability to begin to recognize when we start to say these things like, things will never get better, or I'm always late, or um, uh, I, I think that I don't have enough strengths, or I'm not worthy. Like all of these thoughts, right, are most likely not true. So how can we dampen down? One technique that I use quite often is to imagine that these thoughts are pretty much like the weather. Thankfully, we had some sleet over the weekend here in New Mexico. Thankfully, it's not sleeting now, right? The weather shifts and the weather changes, and so do our thoughts. If we can allow them to move and pass and not judge or identify ourselves with them, then we have more capacity. So let's just take a moment to come just a little off our screen. You can close your eyes, or you can look at something beautiful or a certain color, and think of a moment where you had a thought that was not useful. Maybe it's a negative thought. It was something that maybe you were told as a kid that you tend to repeat. might be sort of that voice in the head. Maybe it's a definitive statement like always, never, which, by the way, aren't true. Things can be middle path. So once you have that thought in your mind, begin to imagine it a bit like a cloud or a wave, that it can shift and change. And then consider asking yourself, well, what would I rather believe? What thought would I rather believe? And once you have that positive thought in your mind, notice how that feels in your body. Some of you are thinking, it doesn't feel really true. What would help it feel true? Is there a movement? Is there an action or a situation in which it could be true? And then imagine you're in your favorite setting. So it could be, for me, it's the mountains and I'm outside and it's a beautiful blue sky. Maybe for you, it's the beach. And begin to allow yourself to notice, right, the weather in this imaginary place. Is it warm? Is it cool? Really allow yourself to be enveloped by this place that feels maybe safe for you, peaceful. Maybe you feel content in this place. And when you're ready, you can bring your eyes back to the screen. Jot down the locale of what you just imagined. So if it was the beach or the mountain or your backyard or your favorite spot in the house, just jot that down. So maybe one word to help you remember. Yeah. And consider going to this place whenever you start to feel that negative thought, because it's a gentle reminder that we can embody safety very quickly, even just using our imagination. So we can dampen down these thoughts, which are judgmental or absolutes, these types of cognitive distortions. We can dampen them down or change them just by beginning to embody our own safety. So consider that this week when you start to kind of go down that aisle, that shopping cart aisle of negative thoughts. And last, find community. I know this is probably preached to you over and over and over again. Who are your connections? Who's your go-to? And many, many of us who are caregivers or have been caregivers, the list is short and sometimes non-existent. Consider adding to that list this week. Is there one person who has helped you in the past? Maybe you haven't talked to them in a while, or maybe you lean on them a lot. Can you consider reaching out to them this week with a hi, how are you? Or thank you for helping in the past. Just allowing yourself that little bit of connection strengthens connection. So if you are willing, write down the name of that person. Next, is there a group that you're affiliated with? Like, you're showing up here. This is a community. You can add mindfulness to your community. Is there a support group? There are so many support groups. There's a grief support group, and you can Google them. There's probably some in your city. There's probably one at Cedarhurst. There's coworkers. There are therapists, but there are support groups. So really consider doing a little bit of homework this week to see if that might be a good fit for you. Um, there's church communities, there's book groups, so take a moment. Is there anything that you belong to in the past or that you would consider finding out more about? So writing down a community support group. And I'll put in the follow-up a couple of ideas for folks. And Ben and I will also pull some from Cedarhurst resources. It's so important to know that you're in the same boat with other people and to be able to practice listening, this kind of empathetic listening. And that is one of the benefits of support groups. What other kind of groups are you involved with? I'd love to hear in the chat box some ways in which you find connection and community. I'll share one while you're typing. One thing that I've tried to do is there's a place I go and I exercise. I've actually really tried hard to name people by name. And what I've found and discovered, so the instructor now knows my name, and I know that they don't know everybody's name, but they know mine. There's something so beautiful about hearing our name and the other person hearing their name. Like, there really isn't a sweeter sound when someone remembers who we are. So really try to make a conscious effort of that, of people I see regularly, calling them by name. What I'm inadvertently doing is creating connection and a sense of community. And whether it's the receptionist where I work, calling them by name. So not just acknowledging, but really that sweetness of the name. And I'll challenge you to see if you can find ways that you can do that, even if you're terrible at it. And I guarantee you, I am not good at it. I have to write it down. But I really try to make a conscious effort. And the delight I see in people lighting up or surprise that I recognize them or remember is really beautiful. So just going to check the chat box. Yeah, Alzheimer's support groups was the first group you joined years ago. Al-Anon, right? Just wonderful for those who are supporting friends or loved one who have addiction issues, whether it's alcohol or substances. And I've heard that from so many people that it's been life-changing. Yeah, another person wrote, I have a friendship that's been a great support and recently let this wane, and we'll be working on growing that back again. Yeah, another boy, I'm quoting Miss Molly a lot today, my mom. You got to you've got to be a friend to make a friend. And that could not be more true. Recently had a conversation with someone when I was asking about what their community was like, and they said, "Oh, this person." I said, "Well, when was the last time you talked to them?" It was like last July. It was more than 6 months. And I thought, oh, well, I can't burden them. And I'm like, but you just told me they're like the most reliable, most important person in your life. So, really check the facts, right? Sometimes we often tell these stories that, oh, this person doesn't want to be bothered, or, oh, I can't let them know because I feel ashamed, or I feel like I should be able to handle this. But guess what? Imagine the roles were reversed and you found out about a friend's illness or a situation and they didn't come to you. Wouldn't it be great if we could let down that guard just enough to give a little tap, a little hello, a little bit of connection, and it will strengthen you. All right. So grief, we're just going to only talk really briefly today. I really wanted to focus on the resiliency side to grief. I've done many talks, and in our follow-up, I'm going to send a link to a grief talk that I've done before where we've talked about how to walk through a grief timeline. And if you have time, if this is really something that you're moving through right now as a part of your life and journey, I highly recommend going back and listening to that. The benefit of listening on replay is you get to hit pause and take all the time you need to be able to construct that grief timeline. So even the word grief, like it comes from the root word of weighty. Um, so there's a sense of heaviness to it. And I love what Elizabeth Gilbert wrote. She wrote, grief is a force of energy that cannot be controlled or predicted. Grief does not obey our plans, wishes. Grief will do whatever it wants to you, whenever it wants. In that regard, grief has a lot in common with love. And because we have loved so much, because we've cared so much, because it's a part of us, that sense of loss is much greater. No wonder we have feelings around grief, right? It's because it was important. It seems to me that if we love, we grieve. That's the deal. That's the pact. Grief and love are forever intertwined. Grief is the terrible reminder of the depths of our love. And like love, grief is non-negotiable. I think what I tend to say is, oh, how human of you to have these grieving feelings. It's just part of being human and part of our experience. Now, there are no set stages. We talk about Elizabeth Kubler-Ross having these set stages, but actually what she was talking about is the individual who is going through a terminal illness might encounter these particular stages in no set order. And in fact, her book was very explicit on that. But like many things, these, because we like to have things in digestible bites, right? We put them into these order, thinking that's what must come next. And in actuality, it's much more like the meditation we did earlier of imagining, right, this scene in nature where just like clouds or hail or rain or beautiful weather, our emotions will change just like the weather. So we can experience a season of an emotion, like depressive symptoms as a result of grief. We can also experience a season of anger, meaning that's how our body is ready to move through it. We feel these feelings of injustice, for example. We can feel a season of melancholy. We can feel a season of relief, which is often accompanied with guilt when we lose someone in our life or experience a loss, and we actually feel a little bit of relief about it, that they're no longer suffering or that we're no longer having to suffer as a caregiver. There can be some guilt with that. And it's important to recognize that actually that's a very normal emotion, just like feeling a sense of shame, of not wanting someone to know that we're experiencing these things. That's all very human, but we're going to experience it in waves. Things will come and things will go. So let's just take a moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen to reflect. And again, if you have your pen and paper, to reflect on something that you've lost recently. I am experiencing a kind of grief that I would call anticipatory grief. I have a pet who's not doing so well, and I'm like, oh, he's turning 13. He's a rescue dog, and we made his birthday Valentine's Day because we didn't know when when his birthday was when we got him, and we think he'll be 13. So it's like, oh, I know that it's coming, and so I'm trying to savor, but there's still that sort of like anticipation. You might also have be grieving an ambiguous loss, which comes with a cancer diagnosis or Alzheimer's. It's like there's these little things that are happening, these losses maybe a loss of memory, a loss of an ability with an illness that, gosh, it just feels very, very ambiguous. You don't know what's going to happen next. So there are many, many different types of grief. If you will, pick one that's maybe middle of the road and jot that one down. You could just jot it by a word, an image. I'm drawing my dog. I won't show you the picture because I'm not an artist, but I know what I mean. And then take for a moment, noticing what emotion that's coming up for you. And it could be the full array of emotions. So allow yourself to just hone on what's coming up for you in this moment. And now, what are you sensing? And I just drew a heart. So I'm kind of feeling a heaviness around my heart. So, and then go ahead and put your pen down and allow yourself to go into that place of where you felt that sensation. Maybe it was a lightness, maybe it was a heaviness, maybe it was a tingle or a coolness in the body. Maybe it's a tightness in the face or the shoulders. And just allow yourself to be with it just for a moment, breathing in and breathing out. And then if you will, you can look at the camera if you like. You're going to take your hands on both sides. And again, I make some assumptions about abilities today. So if it hurts your shoulders to raise your hands or you don't have access to it, you can also imagine it. But taking both hands and just gently cupping around the head. Notice how your hands are actually creating edges for your thoughts to feel contained. So creating a sense of container, and notice any sensations between the hands. And then place one hand on your forehead and one hand on the back of your head. And again, feeling that container around the thoughts and noticing any sensations between the hands, any softening that might be happening. And then move your hand from the back of the head, keep the hand on the forehead, to the heart. Notice that connection between the heart and the hands. Notice the connection between the head and the heart. And if you're not sensing anything, that's okay. You can notice cool, warm, tingly, numb, just noticing. And then move the hand from the forehead to the stomach. So the hand on the heart and the hand on the stomach. And is there any sensations or energy between the hands? You have a nerve that innervates from the back of the skull all the way through your visceral organs. Our body actually feels things before we can actually speak things. And this is the skill we hope to attune to and cultivate. And then last, keep the hand there on the belly and then put the hand on the back of the head again. Just noticing right there at the base of the skull where all of those nerves that communicate from the belly to the brain. Can you offer yourself just a little bit of softness, softening the edges of sensation and bringing in some compassion? And then as you release that, you can place your hand anywhere on the body. So if you're feeling some tension in the shoulder, tension in the jaw, so any other residual tension that didn't dissipate just now, just noticing that. And then we'll take 3 breaths together. So breathe in through the nose. You can sigh, yawn, or exhale. And breathe in again. This time, make your exhale just a little bit longer than your inhale. Notice what softens in the body. And then one more time, breathe in. Maybe you add a stretch to that breathe in, taking up space, and then exhaling, finding softness. Take one moment to check in. How do I feel now compared to before doing that exercise? Maybe you feel the same. That's okay. Maybe you feel a little lighter, a little less tension. Just noticing that. And then ask yourself, what is one thing? We covered a ton of things today. What is one thing you want to put in your back pocket and actually do today? So there was a lot, like just noticing where stress is in your body, paying attention to triggers. Yeah, I love it. Someone wrote, I feel like I shouldn't get paid for this hour of work. Yeah, right. This is taking pockets of time, whether it's an hour or 1 minute, to pay attention to yourself is the gift that will make the difference in resetting your nervous system. It just will. And you're worth that. It is so important. All right. Well, I'm hoping that you will pick one thing to do today and take time to practice. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll send some follow-up things. I hope everyone has just a gorgeous day. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Melissa. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're
This has
welcome.
been wonderful. Well, if you want to join us again next first Monday of the month, will be on March 4th, and it'll be the funny thing about well-being, evidence for humor, which I love because I like to be the funny guy. So
Oh,
combine
good.
that
I'm
with
going to
my
put you on the spot
oh,
then.
please, absolutely.
All right. Awesome. Oh, thank you all so much. And Nicole, it's lovely to see you. I'm glad you came. Yeah. Thank you. Bye, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful
Bye.
day.
You're welcome. Take care, everybody. All right, Ben. Have a good one.
Thank you.